So I think we're going to start with a roll call. Mr. McLaughlin? Oh, I don't see Mr. McLaughlin.
Here. I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. No, that's okay.
There's no problem. 1 second, please.
Sure.
Mr. Salmon? Here. Ms. Schaefer?
Here.
Ms. Beckman?
Here.
Mrs. White?
Here.
Mrs. McCune?
Here.
Ms. Hira?
Here.
Mrs. Korn?
Here.
Mrs. Richmond?
Here.
Mr. Markarian?
Here.
Mr. Syatt?
Here.
Mrs. Gray?
Here.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Good evening and welcome. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education of Bernards Township. Notice of the time and place of this meeting was provided, and copies of that resolution were forwarded to the official newspapers as designated by the Board of Education and to the Township Clerk, and a copy of the notice was posted on the bulletin board of the Board of Education offices in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act.
Madam President, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Madam President.
Of course.
Could everybody just make sure if they have the YouTube running on another device or another machine that YouTube is being muted? I'm getting reports that we're getting echo or a double sound. So if we could just make sure that if you have the YouTube live stream running, that you have it muted, and that if you're not speaking to mute your self as well. Thanks. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. Due to the public health emergency in the state of New Jersey, as declared in Executive Order 103, the board will be suspending normal meeting procedures this evening and conducting a virtual meeting. Directions for accessing the virtual public meeting were posted on the district website, www.bernardsboe.com. The same directions were posted at our intended but unavailable meeting location. We very much welcome input from the public. Because this is a virtual meeting, public comment will be handled one of 3 ways. Public comment method number 1, which is the preferred method, is the full video via Zoom. Step 1, when you are ready to make a public comment, join the Board of Education meeting via the Zoom link posted on the district webpage, www.bernardsboe.com. Plan for your participation in the meeting by turning on your camera and microphone, dressing appropriately, maintaining a proper background setting for your camera's view, having a quiet space, and muting the YouTube live stream of the Board of Education meeting when you are speaking so there is no feedback with your participation in the Zoom meeting. You'll be placed in a queue and admitted to the meeting when it is your turn to make a public comment. Once you see that you are admitted to the Zoom call, it will be your turn to make your public comment. Please begin your public comment by stating your full name and address. After making your public comment, please exit the Zoom meeting so that the next person waiting may make their public comment. Method 2 is the dial-in via Zoom. When you're ready to make your public comment, join the Zoom meeting using the dial-in phone number and meeting ID posted on the district website. Plan for your participation in the meeting by having a quiet space and muting the YouTube live stream of the Board of Education meeting when you are speaking so there is no feedback with your participation in the Zoom meeting. You'll be placed in a queue and admitted to the meeting when it is your turn to make a public comment. Once you see that you are admitted to the Zoom call, it will be your turn to make your public comment. Please begin your public comment by stating your full name and address. After making your public comment, please exit the Zoom meeting so that the next person waiting may make a public comment, make a public comment can be admitted. And public comment method 3, if the preferred full video is not an option and the dial-in method fails, please follow these directions. Starting at 7 p.m., email your comment to btconnect@bernardsboe.com or text your comment to 908-292-3047. Use public comment as the email subject or the start of the text message. Indicate your first and last name and address. This is required for your public comment to be included. Whether you use method 1, 2, or 3 for public comment, please note that public comments are limited to a maximum of approximately 3 minutes if read aloud. Individuals are permitted a maximum of 1 public comment during public comment on agenda items and a maximum of 1 public comment during public comment on non-agenda items. Public comments submitted via method 1 and 2 will be processed first, then comments submitted by method 3. An individual's comments made using method 1 or 2 will not also be read into the record through method 3. The Board of Education reserves the right to limit the length of time allotted for public comment. The board will be limiting public comment to 45 minutes for agenda items and an additional 45 minutes for non-agenda items if necessary. No public comments will be accepted before 7 p.m. or after item 19, board forum of the agenda begins. Please understand that public comment portions of our agendas are not structured as question and answer sessions, but rather are offered as opportunities to share your thoughts with the board. The board may or may not respond to public comments. Any board responses to public comments will generally be addressed during board forum or during committee reports. However, all comments are considered and will be investigated and addressed as appropriate. Please be courteous and mindful of the rights of others when providing your comments. Comments may not be abusive, obscene, threatening, or irrelevant. Please understand that students and employees have specific legal and privacy protections. The board is not permitted to respond in public to comments about students and employees. Please also understand that the board will not be responsible for the content of comments made by members of the public. Members of the public are cautioned that they are commenting at their own risk, and any personally directed statements they make may subject them to legal liability to the affected individual. If it is necessary for the board to go into executive session at the end of the meeting, we will provide an estimated length of time for the session and whether any action is anticipated to be taken upon returning to the public session. With that long and reiterating message, we are up to our student representative, Juliet. Thanks for joining us, Juliet.
Hello. This will be a very short update. I hope everyone had a great long weekend as we near both the end of marking period 3 and spring break. I know a lot of fellow students are really excited for Spite. It's been a strange year and it's nice to have some normal breaks, some of the normal breaks that we look forward to every year. In terms of traditional annual events, senior prom has been rescheduled a little earlier in the year, which makes the approaching end of the year feel even closer. I know a lot of my peers are really eager to hear the presentations today, so that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliet. Okay, with that, we are going to move right on to Mr. Markarian and the instructional program plans for spring of 2021.
Thank you, Madam President. So I'm excited tonight to be here with you. And I just wanted to start by welcoming everyone. I hope you had a nice long weekend as well. And I want to thank some extra attendees to our meeting tonight. Mr. Syed's here as always, but we also have Ms. O'Connell, our Director of Special Services, and all of our principals are here tonight. Dr. Oliver from Liberty Corner, Ms. Hosney from Mouse Prospect, Ms. Hudak from William Annan, Dr. Lasvik from Ridge High School, Ms. Foley from Oak Street, and Mr. Simpola from Cedar Hill are all joining us tonight to help talk a little bit about some adjustments that we see coming hopefully a little bit later this spring in order to wrap up the 4th marking period. So I'm just going to share screen here. If you give me a moment to do that, we'll get into the content for tonight's presentation. Okay, can everybody see that? Great, thanks. So obviously just a quick title slide. This is our instructional program plan for the spring of 2021. at this, our Board of Education meeting on April 5th, 2021. So for starters, I just wanted to remind folks a little bit about where we are coming from with respect to this presentation. And specifically, I just want to talk a little bit about the form that was issued on March 12th. So we put out a selection form on March 12th to all of our families, and we asked them to make a selection by the end of the week on Friday, March 19th, to indicate for us what instructional program they would like their child enrolled in for the fourth marking period for the last portion of the school year. And at the time that we put that survey out, we had anticipated our next shift to be on Monday, April 26th. And you might recall this brief paragraph from March 12th's SOS Express, where we anticipated a couple of scenarios that would be the likely outcomes coming out of the selection form that we were asking folks to finish for March 19th. And we also talked about the outcome and the planning that would result from that selection form. We would want to take into consideration how many students wanted to come back to school in person in the spring, as well as our health data and how things are going with our vaccination efforts. So just to kind of pick up on that line of thinking and that thread from back on March 12th, I wanted to start by talking a little bit about the outcome of the survey with respect to the number of students that wanted to come back in person, as well as the health data and our vaccination information that we can share so far. So the first piece of information is, what does it look like with respect to the number of students that would theoretically come back to us on our anticipated date of April 26th? So as you can see in the leftmost column, we have each of our schools listed. And in the center column, we have approximately the percentage of the current student body at each school that are attending in person as of now. So at Ridge, about 44% of the student body is in person. And as you can see, there are percentages listed for the other schools as well. Oak Street is leading the pack right now with about 80% of their student body attending in person. After we received the selection form results, we took a look at the increase of students that would like to attend in person in the spring. And you can see what the new percentages of the student body would be after accounting for incoming students on April 26th. So for example, Annan would have about 73% of their student population coming in person based on the selection forms that were collected on March 19th. Ridge would go up to about 2/3 of the student body. Mount Prospect would be a little over half. Cedar Hill would get to about 69% of their student population. Liberty Corner would go up a little bit to 73%. And Oak Street, as you can see, would have very little change, as most of that student body is already coming in person. Health conditions around the state. So the top of this page, each of these items, these titles are actually hyperlinks that take you to the location of where this chart comes from. This is the state's website where they post the cases of COVID each day, new daily cases. And you can kind of see what's going on over the course of the last year or so. And the second hyperlink takes you to the current Cali score for the state of New Jersey. If you're interested, I imagine most everyone knows that New Jersey is currently all orange in each region of the state right now. Next, we have the health conditions in our county. Again, the titles are hyperlinks that take you to where this data was drawn from. Similarly to the state information, you can see here daily new cases over time. I do want to point out in the very far right of this graph, I believe it was March 28th. There's a bit of an anomaly there compared to the last couple months. You see a sudden spike. And I just wanted to share with you that I did reach out to our local health department to inquire as to what might have happened there. And I was advised that there was some catch-up data of new cases that had not been previously recorded that ended up getting recorded on that day. So that's a bit of an anomaly. And it's pretty obvious as you're looking at the last couple months that there was a sudden peak there that was associated with old data that was entered to catch up on March 28th. And as I mentioned, the Cali score for the state being orange and our Central West region also being orange. This hyperlink for the current Cali score is the actual Somerset County, because they're also computing those scores for each individual county. Somerset is currently also orange. This last slide of statistics is taken from the Berners Township Health Department. The Berners Township Health Department has a section of their website dedicated to information on COVID-19. The title of the slide is also a hyperlink that takes you to that section of the Berners Township Health Department website. And if you follow the breadcrumbs there, you can eventually get to this chart, which is one of many charts that the town is recording specifically for Berners Township. And this chart simply represents the total cases by week in town, and it's showing you the increase that happened each week. So the green plus 51, plus 36, plus 44 shows you the amount of increase from one week to the next as they track the total number of cases in town, which as of April 1st was around 1573. So I don't want to sound negative when we look back at these charts. You know, we do see some upward sloping trends, especially in the case of this state graph. You know, on the positive side, even though case numbers have been going up slowly the past couple months, the good news is that we see the mortality going way down at the same time. So that's somewhat encouraging. And so the last thing I wanted to mention, besides the results of the selection form and the health conditions, was to talk a little bit about how we're doing with respect to vaccination in our district. So with that, I'd like to have our Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Syed, who's in charge of Human Resources, speak to this slide a little bit. Mr. Syed?
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. We were really monitoring the eligibility for K-12 educators for vaccinations. So, you know, as soon as we were aware that our staff members were now eligible, we started to reach out to some local agencies. And one of the agencies that we were able to develop a partnership with was Atlantic Health. And Atlantic Health was really someone that became reliable in terms of making a connection for our staff for vaccination. So we were able to set up 2 rounds of vaccinations for them, where staff were typically going up to Rockaway to that mega site up there. But we were able to arrange for about 230 staff members to get vaccinations through Atlantic Health. So I can't say enough about what they were able to do for our staff. So we certainly appreciate that. And I did reach out to them again on Friday. There are still some staff who had signed up through Atlantic Health that we're still working on. So hopefully we'll be able to bring that to fruition by the time everyone returns. But what we wanted to do is, because we were also aware that many staff were getting vaccinated on their own. They had made appointments either through a local pharmacy, through a doctor, and also the BTEA, the Berners Township Education Association, was integral in helping staff to obtain appointments as well. I know their leadership has done a tremendous job in helping staff obtain appointments. So where we stand right now, this is as of last week, we put out a survey to the entire staff, not including substitutes. This is all permanent staff in the district. And this is permanent staff who aren't on leaves right now. So what I did was I reduced the total staff to folks who are actually working in the district right now, who are on site and who aren't on leave. And so when you look at that number and you look at the number of staff that responded to the survey, we had about 83% of staff respond. And of that group, we have, of the total group, we're looking at about 68% of all staff who should be vaccinated by May 3rd, by the time we return. That's a conservative estimate that doesn't account for staff who aren't eligible for vaccinations because they've had COVID, so therefore they can't obtain the vaccination at this time. I do have another group of staff who will help facilitate vaccinations for once they're eligible. And then we also had a group of staff who indicated they would be interested in us obtaining vaccinations. So we've actually found another group in town, a pharmacy, who has offered us vaccination opportunities for staff. And actually we sent a group of names down to that agency today. So all in, I would estimate that we could be close to 80% of the staff by the time we return on May 3rd. If you account for the staff who were going to get vaccinations for, who indicated they were interested, and for staff who answered that they weren't comfortable sharing the information on the survey, my conservative estimate is we'll be about 80% of total staff vaccinated. So really pleased with that number at this point. And again, we'll continue to make the vaccination opportunities available. And I'm noticing more and more available for our staff, which is really, really promising. And back to you, Mr. Markarian.
Thank you, Mr. Syed. Okay, so in addition to just giving you sort of the follow-up to that SOS Express from March 12th and picking up on those pieces of information that influence our decision-making and recommendations going forward, another very significant piece of information that came to us on March 19th and March 23rd were some new guidelines for school operations. Those were first issued on March 19th by the CDC. For those of you that might be interested in drilling into that, this is a hyperlink to those guidelines. And then the following week, on March 23rd, the Department of Health for New Jersey updated their guidance kind of based on some of the things that had come out of the CDC's recommendations. And I just highlighted a couple of important notes. There were many, many pieces in that guidance. But a couple of the significant things that you might have seen about in the news or heard about in the news was that the recommendation for elementary schools was that we could have the students seated at least 3 feet apart. And that came as welcome news for us because we actually already had some situations where the students were that close together. And for those of you that have been following this issue all year long, the distance between the students seating in the building is known as their social distance, and that social distance has been recommended at 6 feet for quite some time, at least 6 feet. And so being able to go to 3 feet is a material difference for us. At the elementary level, the CDC has indicated, and the Department of Health has indicated, that this is okay for these students, actually even at our current level of transmission, our orange level, if you will. So that's a good thing for us, and it makes us feel a little bit better about the situation and the way that we've currently laid out the seating at our elementary schools. Now, at the middle and the high school, those students can also be seated 3 feet apart, but the recommendation there is that that's okay for low, moderate, or substantial community transmission. In areas of high community transmission, the middle and high school students are recommended to be 6 feet apart if cohorting is not possible. So that comes to us really in both guidance documents, and given the fact that we are in the orange zone right now, it makes it a little bit more of an area of concern for us to watch when we're talking about bringing in more middle and high school students, which obviously we are talking about doing. So when you looked at those percentages that I shared earlier and you saw the increase in percentages for William Annan and Ridge High School, we're talking about roughly 400 more students going to Ridge after spring break, and another 200 or so more coming back to school at Annan. So those numbers are significant, and pursuant to these recommendations, we need to be mindful and watch, especially what's going on with our middle school and high school students, where, of course, we have seen more cases of COVID. I think we're all aware of that. If any of us are watching the metrics that we're posting on our district webpage, we do see more cases among our middle and high school students than we do among our elementary students. So with all of that in mind, we wanted to try to make a reasonable recommendation for now based on what we're seeing. And obviously our goal, we have a goal in mind of trying to move towards normalcy. We've been trying to do that, but of course, we've also been trying to keep our staff and our students safe in the process. And so we've been pretty measured all year long as we've taken different steps. And what we're looking at for the week after spring break is to leave things status quo, right? So Monday the 12th, we start the week off for spring break. We come back from that week off on Monday the 19th. And for that week, we're not suggesting we make any changes whatsoever. The following Monday, we would implement the selections that parents had made on that selection form that was due March 19th, meaning if parents opted to have their student come back to school in person, we would do that on Monday, April 26th. And some parents actually opted to move their child to virtual, and we would make sure that that took place by that date as well, Monday, April 26th. So that's where we would see a significant increase in the number of students attending Ridge and Annan. We're talking about, as I mentioned earlier, about 400 at Ridge, 200 or so at Annan. The balance of students, about 100 or so students are scattered across the 4 elementary schools. But I think you saw from the percentages that those were not as big an impact relative to the current environment that we have now compared to Ridge and Annan. So we would plan to do that on April 26th, but for that week, that first week that we move the students in, we would keep the schedule exactly as it is right now, meaning we would still have abbreviated days the week of April 26th. For the middle school and the high school, that Wednesday would still be virtual, Wednesday of that week. So the kids would come Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And they would come each of those days if they were an in-person student. And that would give us kind of an opportunity to gauge how things are and the volume of students that we have reporting in person at that time. Obviously, there's been a lot of question marks and emails that we've seen, people wondering about, how are things going to be after spring break? Do we have to be worried about a lot of cases? And truthfully, we just have to kind of see how things go. And gauge based on our experience, what we see with cases or the lack of cases, hopefully. The following Monday, May 3rd, is the date that we are talking about making a more significant change, and that would be having all of the schools begin full-day schedules. And that means going back to traditional schedules a la September of last school year, where our elementary schools are running 8:45 to 3:15, and the middle school and the high school are running until 2:25, 2:30 timeframes. And those are the traditional schedules. And when we get to those, when we get to that date, May 3rd, that would be the proposal to try to make it happen at that time. Now, obviously, for the middle school and the high school, as I mentioned earlier, right now we're in orange. I don't know where we're going to be on May 3rd. I don't know if we're going to be trending in a positive direction the next few weeks, a negative direction the next few weeks. But we do have the opportunity to revisit this on April 26th. Certainly, parents need to understand something really significant about when we begin full-day schedules, whenever that is, and that is that at this juncture of the school year, we're not going to be able to scale up a food service program. What that means is students will need to bring their own lunch to school. Obviously, we do have a small free and reduced lunch program that we've been maintaining all year. But aside from that, we're not able to scale up to a capacity to do a lunch service at this juncture of the school year. So whenever we do get to those full days, hopefully May 3rd, students will need to bring their own lunch to school. Now, when we get to this point, Monday through Friday, we are talking about every day, Monday through Friday, in-person instruction for all students. There wouldn't be a virtual Wednesday, no more abbreviated days. That's what we're hoping to get to by May 3rd. One of the things that's come up as a question mark has been related to some of the what if scenarios, right? Well, what if there's an overwhelming number of positive cases as we approach April 19th, right? The first Monday after spring break. Well, we will be watching very, very closely our reporting hotline, if you will. And I would just like to pitch at this time what many parents hopefully have been seeing in the Friday messages that I send, as well as the messages that the principals send, is to please, please, please report COVID cases, positive cases, to our centralized email address, covidcase@bernardsboe.com. Okay, so we have that one specific email address that we are asking all parents to use. Of course, I know some parents have reached out to nurses when they have a positive case. Could be a case in the household, could be a child that's positive. It could be that a child needs to quarantine because they were exposed, maybe by a relative or a friend, what have you. And of course, we want you to communicate with the school nurses, but we really want to have one depository for all of those communications so we don't lose track of them. So please forgive me while I'm pitching covidcase@bernardsboe.com as that email address to please send those communications to, especially over that week of spring break, when we're really down on staff that week. And if anything comes up during that week, we want to try to intervene before the students return on Monday, April the 19th, in the event that anyone needs to stay home. We really don't want to have a problem that week. So please let us know during the course of the week using that covidcase@bernardsboe.com if you have something, some positive case that you need to report, so that we can help do any necessary contact tracing and let students know who shouldn't be coming to school if necessary. So that's one if, right? We need to watch how things go as we lead up to April 19th. It's certainly possible we could need to be all virtual on April 19th at one or more school. We are not planning on that. Our plan is to come back to school in person April 19th, status quo for that week. However, you know, we certainly want you as a public to know that we will be watching how things go over the course of that spring break, and we'll do what we have to do if necessary. Hopefully nothing drastic happens where we need to have any schools go virtual, but you know, certainly we're prepared to if we have to. What about these regional Cali scores, the health in Bernards Township, right? The health of our county, of our region, things that I talked about earlier in the presentation. As we approach May 3rd, the date that we hope to bring students in for full days, what do we do then? Well, as I mentioned, we do have the board meeting on April 26th, where we can pause and take one final look. But we also know that for our elementary schools, even in orange, according to our CDC and Department of Health guidelines, we can still have the students seated at 3 feet apart. So, you know, we would plan on doing that for our elementary schools, K-5, for May 3rd. It really kind of comes down to our 6-12 population and how are things looking there. Are we still in orange? Are we moving toward red? God forbid. Or hopefully are we moving towards yellow? Maybe we are even yellow by May 3rd, who knows? I'd like to think that you know, we move in the right direction. So as I said, there is the area we need to monitor closely as we approach May 3rd. and we'll have one last bite at that apple at our board meeting on April 26th. So before moving on, I do want to point out one other significant aspect of the CDC and the DOH guidelines that were updated in the middle of March. And that piece is with respect to students eating lunch, because obviously, if we get to full days for our students, one of the significant things that's going to need to happen is that we're going to need to give our students an opportunity to eat lunch. And we have been having students eat snack at the elementary level. It's been going okay. So, you know, when we get to lunch, one of the critical pieces is that all the guidance documents still indicate that we need that 6 feet of separation, especially when the students are eating and they take their masks off, obviously, to eat. So when the masks are off, we've got to have them at least 6 feet apart. We know that in the classrooms, when we keep the masks on, we're definitely going to have students at 3 feet apart, especially as we welcome more students back to school. But at lunch, we've got to make sure they're separated 6 feet. So I did ask the principals to join us tonight, just to speak a little bit about the plans that they have to address that eventuality that hopefully we are doing on May 3rd, how they anticipate being able to spread the students out to give them that 6 feet of space for lunch. So some action items that we've been working on, as I mentioned, we have to plan for lunch. We have to make schedule changes around the schools. If we get to that full day, obviously things are going to be different. We're going to be back to similar types of schedules that we are used to having pre-COVID. We have to have bus passes redone according to later dismissal times. I mentioned the lunch issue. The middle school and the high school are going to be back to their 9-period schedule. And when that happens, of course, the teachers need to plan a little bit differently. That's an adjustment. The elementary schools have to make some adjustments with their planning. We have to restage classrooms and prepare for more students to be there. So we have to have the seating, making some furniture adjustments, any kind of additional barriers that might be needed for more students coming in, we'll get those ordered. And obviously we have to continue to maximize social distancing and other mitigation measures. So just before we get to the principals giving us some quick highlights about what they anticipate coming up in their buildings, I did ask Ms. O'Connell to join us and just give us a quick update about what's been going on with our special education programs and what she sees going forward. So Ms. O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. As most of our parents are aware, our self-contained programs began full day as of March 1st. Those programs included our preschool, our elementary BD, LLD classes, our CAP program, and our vocational skills, our CBAP program, sorry, and our vocational skills program up at the high school. I'm very happy to report that everyone is doing very well in those programs. There was a slight adjustment when we all came back, getting used to that type of rigor, especially being in person, but everyone has adjusted and they're really happy to be back. One of the issues we have faced, and as many parents are aware, is we had to have certain closures for close contacts. I know this is frustrating. It's frustrating for parents. It's frustrating for teachers and for students. However, our main objective is always to keep students safe. So if a student or a staff member tests positive within that classroom, we do have to sometimes close that classroom down. So that has been somewhat difficult for some of our classes. As far as our resource room and our in-class support classes are concerned, currently they are following the general education guidelines of half-day schedule for all kindergarten through 12th grade. One of the things that I know is a concern for everyone is that as we move forward to a full day, will our students still have the opportunity for extra help during the school day? We'd like to reassure you that that will definitely continue to take place. We also want to remind everyone, please utilize your case managers. If you feel your child is struggling or has any type of issue whatsoever, and you have not been able to get hold of a classroom teacher, feel free to reach out to the case managers and they will be of great assistance. One of the things we want to encourage, and for the students that we've seen have been most successful during this learning process, are those students that attend regularly and participate in their classes. We cannot emphasize the importance of attendance, not only for our virtual students, but also for our students that are in person. So please, everyone, be vigilant and have your child attend class and participate in the classes. We encourage students will continue to use their online tools as a way of communication with teachers outside of the classroom. Last but not least, our extended school year program. It's summertime before we know it. Our students will be on site July 6th to August 5th, and we have extended those hours to make up for some of the program loss throughout the course of the year. Thank you, Mr. Markarian.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connell. You raised some great points. I know that Ms. O'Connell is really involved with her team, not only with our students that are classified with IEPs, but also in helping us to plan interventions and support services for students. And she really raised some great points for us here. I agree wholeheartedly that I have dealt with many questions about the close contact situation that Ms. O'Connell described. Do have that a bullet point on that later in the presentation, but I think one of the challenges that we've grappled with there is the fact that we're working with that 6 feet of distance between people and a 15-minute rule, and trying to manage whether or not somebody has spent too much time too close to someone, and in some cases just too much time in proximity to someone that was identified as a positive case in the school facility. And those cases can be really difficult, and we have to make the best judgment calls we can. We're really trying hard to minimize the number of individuals that get identified as a close contact and have to quarantine. We recognize that that is a difficult issue for all of us, for families, for staffing. And as the school year has evolved and continues to evolve, we're doing the best we can through experience and judgment to minimize those situations. So we appreciate everybody's patience in that. We know that that's difficult. And, we've also heard concerns and actually accolades for the opportunities that students have had to get assistance during the day for their academics and other supports. And as we look at opportunities to try to get our students back to full day schedules, we recognize that that afternoon opportunity, or some of those afternoon opportunities scheduled for many of our students, are not going to be available in the same way. So we have to look at other ways that we can support the students. And for example, the high school in their traditional schedule, they have 4 tutorial periods a day, 4 tutorial periods per week rather, that each teacher makes themselves available. And our teachers are really wonderful in making themselves available for students during those tutorial periods. And quite frankly, many of them go way above and beyond before school and after school, constantly communicating with and working with students. And whether your child is struggling as somebody that has a case manager because they have an IEP, and as Jean mentioned, she encourages families of students with IEPs to contact case managers. Of course, every family is encouraged to reach out if they feel like something is going sideways with their child, whether it's reaching out to a case manager or could be simply the school counselor that's assigned to the child, the teachers that are working with the child, building administrators. We're all here to try to help the students. So even if we change our schedule and one opportunity isn't there, that doesn't mean that there are no opportunities, and we stand here to try to support all of our students. So I think that's a really important point. And finally, Jean brought up the issue of the school year and the summertime. Now, obviously, extended school year is a unique program that Jean's referring to for certain classified students as part of their IEPs. But we are working on summer opportunities, even for students that do not have IEPs, in our early literacy programs, where we recognize that some students may need some extra help, and we'll be talking about those more when we get to our budget presentation next month. So stay tuned for that. Thank you very much, Ms. O'Connell. At this stage, we're going to start off with Dr. Oliver from Liberty Corner School is going to talk a little bit about some of the common adjustments that our elementary schools will look to be making as they prepare to have students for full days. Dr. Oliver?
Thanks, Mr. Markarian. Good evening. Obviously, like Mr. Markarian just said, the elementary school principals, as we always do, work together to discuss our planning as we're moving forward. So we find ourselves in a situation where we're planning once again, as we do typically over the summertime, but looking at schedules. That's really the first hurdle that we had to tackle. We've been looking at our master schedules. What we've been looking to do is provide some passing time for our special area teachers. So those of you who are not familiar with the special area teacher, those are our PE, music, art teacher, the computer teacher, the librarian. Those teachers, in some cases, were displaced from their classrooms because we were putting other classrooms into those locations. So we've looked at the master schedule, typically don't have passing time, but those special area teachers are now, some of them are on carts. So they're moving from class to class. So we wanted to make sure that the children were not lacking any of their special area time, which will increase to 50 minutes as it typically does during any school and during a typical school year. So that was the first hurdle that we kind of had to take on, was the master schedule. And then just like it does in every school year, we look at special education, make sure that we're meeting individual IEPs, set schedules that are going to work for the both gen ed teachers and the special area special education teachers. We've finished those, or maybe some of us are still working on finalizing those, working with the special ed department as well and our teachers. And then the next area that we're looking at working is obviously drilling that down to the general education schedules. And then we also have some related services that we have to make sure that we're scheduling. So those are your instructional support, reading, writing, and math. You have your speech, OT, ESL, and PT. So those are the schedules that we'll be working on, or some of us have started already, and the rest of us will be finishing prior to or just around when we return from spring break. So that's one focus that we've been dealing with and working with the other supervisors on as well. Another area that we've had a lot of questions about are what are we going to do about recess, and what would that look like? We're going back to a full day, so we need to, many of us need to have one grade level at recess while the other grade level is having their lunch. So we are going to be having recess for our children K-5 outside, weather permitting. The one area that we continue to talk about is what will recess look like. It's going to be on our fields or sometimes on our blacktops. We are not going to be using our large shared equipment currently. So we're going to be working with the children, working with our lunch aides, we call them lunch leaders, having things for the children to be playing with, but making sure that we can clean things such as balls and maybe some other activities for them during recess time. So that's something we're working on, but the children will be having recess. Obviously, there's some differences regarding some of our schools, and those differences are really based off of the logistics of each of our schools. So one of the things Mr. Markarian asked us to share out were our class sizes. I've indicated where we're at with our classes right now. You'll see that I have an asterisk next to grades 3, 4, and 5. Those classes, some of them had to be moved to a larger teaching area, reasoning that we now don't have some of our special ed teachers or special area teachers in their teaching locations. I needed to bring back one virtual teacher in 4th grade because 4th grade is a larger number of students returning and students in those classes. That 1 4th virtual teacher is coming back, bringing with her the children that were out virtually, getting virtual instruction, and a few of the other children that were in another 4th grade virtual class. You'll see 4th grade, the class sizes, and typically on a typical school year, we don't have class sizes ranging from that, that large, from 12 to 21. But one of my 4th grade classes is in the library. So there's sufficient space in there. We're still following, policies, practices of our class sizes, but it does look a little bit offset, but that's just due to the spacing that we have going on. One of the big questions that comes up, and I know that we just even had another meeting about it today, is what is it going to look like when we have lunch and recess. At Liberty Corner, I've taken or had all of the furniture in the cafeteria removed, and even including the rectangle lunch tables, and outfitted the cafeteria with student desks, and they are all 6 feet apart. And the reason for that is just planning for in the event that we do not have, weather permitting, if we can be outside or not. We are also looking at providing lunch outside. We have some new furniture that has been purchased. We are planning on where those locations are going to be. Might need to split some of our classes. Some might be inside and some might be outside on a rotating basis. Some of that really has to do with the fact that we, based off of our staffing. So our lunch aides or lunch leaders that are working with us and who we have on a particular day, and using them for coverage. But that's the plan, is to get the children outside when we can. But we are also fortunate that we can house the children in our cafeteria. I know that's not the case for all of our schools. Again, Mr. Markarian said that it's going to be a brown bag, or bring your own lunch to school. So that's going to be, no matter if it's indoors or outside. Just looking to make sure I didn't miss anything here. Oh, one thing I did have, sorry, Mrs. Hosany, just one more thing. I know some of the parents have been interested in seeing what the classes look like. So 2 weekends ago, 2 Fridays ago, the Friday blast that I've sent out. If you're interested, I've had pictures of all of our classrooms, what they currently look like. So if you're looking to see what your son or daughter's classroom looked like at Liberty Corner School, take a look at 2 weeks ago, the Friday blast that went out. Sorry, I missed that.
Thank you, Dr. Oliver. Ms. Hosany.
Okay, Mount Prospect School. So a lot of the information is very similar to what Mr. Markarian shared and Dr. Oliver, and I'm sure you'll hear from Mr. Sampola and Ms. Foley as well at Cedar Hill and Oak Street. We are still pretty much, we are probably the lower of the schools that are having kids return. We are having about 60 kids return on April 26th. 13 kids are coming from kindergarten, smaller numbers in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And then 5th grade, we had a really big surge. We have about 24 kids who are returning. Part of that is due because we are bringing 2 virtual teachers back, 1 in kindergarten and 1 in 5th grade. And so those parents decided to remain with the teacher, and so they opted to come into the school. So very similar to what Dr. Oliver shared, we have our classes are ranging anywhere between 14 and 15. The larger classes, just like Dr. Oliver had said, they have been moved. 3rd grade has been moved into our kindergarten classrooms, which are larger. 4th grade we moved 1 into our art room. We have another one in our 5th grade hallway, which is again a larger classroom due to the way the shelving is placed. And then also we have one of our returning 5th grade teachers is going to be in our music room, which those of you who know our facility is quite a large room. So again, you see some fluctuation in those numbers, and that's based upon the size of the classroom. The arrival and dismissal times, Mr. Markarian did point to it, but for those abbreviated days, we are remaining with 8:30, our doors will open. We are very fortunate in that the students have been excellent in maintaining the 6 feet distance, and they come in, they enter our building, and they go directly to our classrooms. Teachers are waiting to greet them, and they get in and start their morning routines and start instruction right at 8:45. We do dismiss our kindergarten a little earlier, both in the abbreviated day and then also 3:15 a.m. to 3 p.m. We don't want to go that early. But we dismiss them a little bit earlier to try to get them out. So that way, when the rest of the kids are coming, we're able to move them along, and then we move the rest of the cars up when our drop off and dismissal is happening. I did send out a very specific information with pickup and drop off instructions for anybody who is returning. So again, if you are in that boat, please email me if you have any specific questions. But we will be continuing to follow all the same guidelines that we currently have been using and have been in place.
Thank you, Ms. Hosany.
I think I have a little more.
A little more on lunch.
So again, very similar. We are very fortunate that we can also have lunch in our cafeteria if we're not outside. The cafeterias, we have approximately 26 sets of cafeteria tables. And what we're going to do is we are staggering our lunch so that every grade level will start with lunch first, and then they will go outside for recess. And we give 10 minutes between before and after each lunch period for the kids to sanitize their hands, as well as for cleaning in between. The classes are assigned to anywhere between 3 to 5 tables, and we will have students sitting 2 per table at opposite ends, opposite corners. So we definitely are within the 6 feet allotment. And then even between classes, we have empty tables, so to separate even the classes. So we're very blessed to have that large space. So I think we're in really good shape with that. We see the windows open, the fans on to maintain the movement of the air the way that has been necessary. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to email myself or Mr. Pepitone, and we can help you with that.
Wonderful. Ms. Foley?
Hello. So you all saw from the numbers that our big challenge was when we uncohorted, because that was when we felt the impact of all of our 80% coming at once. And you reminded me, Joanne, of a car line situation. That first snowstorm car day of uncohorting is like a bad memory, but we're good now. We have that under control. So similar in scheduling to everything that Dr. Oliver said. When we uncohorted, we really made sure that the K1 and 2 were at lower sizes, as you can see from the average class sizes there. As we got into 3, 4, and 5, it got a lot more challenging, and they're a little bit larger. For this reason, and actually you can go to the next slide, Mr. Markarian. For this reason, our lunches are impacted a little bit in this way. So our first plan is permanent picnic, we're calling it. Everybody's going to go outside for recess at each grade level and play and then eat lunch right outside, very informally. So make sure that everyone's prepared for that. When it's not possible, we have 2 different plans. The K2 will eat in their classrooms, since those are spacious enough to accommodate the 6 feet obligation. And the larger classes are going to eat in the cafe, 2 to a table, separated with barriers, and making sure that we can leave. We also rearranged our schedule to alternate lunches between K2 and 3-5, so we have plenty of room in between the lunches for cleaning. So we're excited to all get back to a full day.
Thank you, Ms. Foley. And last but not least, Mr. Sampola.
Hi, good evening. So I kind of divided my talk into school schedule and grade level schedules. Cedar Hill, we will be utilizing our normal full day schedule with some COVID safety measures added in. We had started about 3 weeks ago, after we uncohorted, opening the doors a little bit earlier than 8:30. We started opening them at 8:25. That's been working really well. Since we have under 30 students joining us for the spring selection, that under 30 will get absorbed into that 8:25 opening. This actually is great because it prevents us from needing the gymnasium holding area, where we'd have a lot of students in one place at one time. And instead, what our students have been doing, they've been lining up in socially distanced lines outside the classrooms until 8:30. In fact, our kindergarten first graders, by the time they make their way up to the first and kindergarten area, it's actually just about 8:30 anyway. So, they're a long way to go for those grade levels. Our bell rings at 8:45 for the start of school. We have our homeroom for 5 minutes for attendance and announcements, and then we'll continue with our normal morning meeting from 8:50 to 9:20. So that's pretty much what we've been doing up till now, and that'll continue even when we go into a full day schedule. For specials, we're reverting to our 15-minute special schedule starting at 9:20 with grade 5. This will include the 10 virtual classes at Cedar Hill, and I'll talk about that in a moment. In terms of our special area classes, just some particulars. Until March 29th, our students were attending all specials except for PE virtually. Starting the 29th of March, we transitioned our students into attending general music, art, and library, which has been great. I actually heard a student this morning who was going into library for the first time this year just in the hallway, "Oh, that's awesome." So he was really excited about that. And if technology or computers will continue to be virtual for all students for the remainder of the year, and that works well because of the virtue of being on computers. Our lunch leaders, our lunch aides, have been assisting teachers with acclimating students to attending in person and helping with cleaning procedures between classes. As we continue to May 3rd to that transition of full day, our lunch leaders will of course need to begin supervising students in recess and lunch. So that week of April 26th, we'll start to transition the lunch leaders from solely assisting with the specials, and our custodians will assume more responsibility for assisting the special area teachers with cleaning in between classes. Dismissal really continuing the same as we've been doing it. We're just really moving it from 1 p.m. to 3:15 p.m. Just a little about band and orchestra. Virtual students continue to receive lessons via Zoom. The teachers are providing schedules once the full day master schedule has been finalized. And our in-person students, depending on the size of the lesson group, are now meeting either in the small lesson room right off the music room or in the cafeteria. And once we get to May 3rd, the cafeteria location will most likely change either to room 504 or possibly to room 102. So I just have to work on setting that up. Some of my general classroom schedule considerations, again, it'll be similar by grade level. So in other words, math will occur at the same time in the same grade level, and it'll include all the regular subject areas. As we're finalizing the full day schedule, we're coordinating our subject area times with the special education classes, including the resource room, self-contained, PTOT and speech, accelerated math and advanced math and instructional support. And because our virtual teachers, because I have 10 virtual teachers and they will continue even after May 3rd, we have those rooms as well available. Our instructional support teachers have been using those rooms to give them a bigger space to meet with students in person. And they, of course, also will have students who are virtual. Mr. Markarian, can you flip? Oh, thanks. Okay. In terms of class size, as I said, we had just under 30 students opt to return in person. We had no students moving to virtual. Our class sizes, and I had published these in the Friday folder last week, the range is, it's just going up a little bit in each grade level, and you can see the numbers there, largest being 5th grade. In terms of lunch, we are going to utilize the cafeteria for lunch. We have a very large cafeteria space at Cedar Hill. We'll also be utilizing the small courtyard that's directly adjacent to the cafeteria. We have tables out there. We also have a seating area near the side lot. We'll have 3 tables out there, so that's nearby the cafeteria. We'll probably utilize that as well on days where we can get students out to eat outside. So there should be plenty of opportunity to move them apart. But in terms of the general routine, we're going to have students sanitize hands upon entering the cafeteria. We'll have 2 students to a table. We do have enough tables with the number of in-person students in each grade level, so that works out just fine. We'll have a barrier at each table so that students can see each other, they can talk to each other, but there will be a barrier between each student. They'll be placed 6 feet apart, and the students will easily be 6 feet apart from table to table. I'll go through procedures with the students, but when they're eating, of course, they'll have their mask off, but once they're done eating or when they're finished eating, when they're not eating, we'll ask them to keep their masks on. And of course, students will sanitize their hands upon their return to class. And that's it. Thanks, Mr. Markarian.
Thanks, Mr. Sampola. All right, I think we've got Ms. Hudak and Dr. Lazovic jumping in at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. I'm going to speak on behalf of some of the secondary level changes that will impact both Ridge High School and the middle school. As Mr. Markarian had alluded to earlier, Ridge and WAMS together are receiving 600 students, Ridge 400, and Annan a little over 200 will be returning when we potentially open our doors. We will change our schedule to a traditional 9-period day. The COVID screening forms that are required for entrance into both the middle school and the high school will continue. And obviously with the increase in this large number of students returning, it will certainly take us longer to make sure everybody has gotten their COVID screening form completed prior to entering the building. Also, traffic for both Ridge and Annan, and I'm sure some of the elementary schools as well. We will have definite increases in traffic during arrival and dismissal times when we go to full day, as well as increases to the number of students who are potentially riding buses. For those families who choose not to have their students riding buses, they will also be driving their children to school. And so we do anticipate more traffic than usual. Students will be a minimum at 3 feet apart in our classrooms at both Ridge and Annan, and of course 6 feet apart when eating and unmasked. Mr. Markarian, to the middle school. So at William Annan, here are some of the implications. As I had said just a moment ago, we're going to go to our normal 9-period traditional day with a 3-minute passing time. Students will continue to report directly to period 1 with no large holding areas available at this time. Those numbers of students congregating are certainly not healthy at the moment. The building will continue to open at 7:25 a.m., no sooner, and the school day will end at the middle school at 2:20 p.m. As I talked about the COVID screening form, in addition, teacher availability, because we are now moving to a full 9-period day as opposed to a split, our ability to cover classes will be significantly impacted when staff members are out. Our average in-person class for content class sizes, and this again is the average. We may have some courses that have upwards of 23 students and some courses that may have less than 15 or 16, but you can see here that on average 6th grade content classes will have 16 students. The average in 7th grade is a bit lower at 15, and then 8th grade 16. Our cycles and electives, which at the middle school are unteamed, range with an average of 20. The end of the year activities at both the middle school and the high school, we are still certainly in the planning stages. We are anxiously awaiting the NJDOE guidance. And so some of the things that we are anticipating on planning for are obviously the end of the year student celebrations, the slideshows and the award ceremonies. Graduation for our 8th grade students is something that we are anticipating further guidance on in that document. And the 8th grade dance at this point will be canceled. Obviously, as we get closer to the end of school year and hopefully if restrictions begin to ease up, then we can consider doing some of these in a more traditional fashion. Next slide, Mr. Markarian. So the implications for the lunch implementation plan and what that will look like at the middle school when we go to a full day, if conditions permit. Students will be assigned to their lunch groups by their current advisory assignment. For those of you who've had middle schoolers, usually we have the entire class eating during 1 period with 80 students pulled out for study hall twice a week. And so in a child's schedule, they would have 3 days of a full 40-minute lunch and then 2 days of a 20-minute lunch for study hall and then a 20-minute lunch period. Going into a full day, we would not be able to house the entire class safely in the cafeteria, and therefore we're going to be assigning lunch groups by advisory. The average advisory group is, again, you can see 15 in 6th grade, 7th grade is 15, and 8th grade is 15. Again, we do have certain advisories that are lower and higher, and we're going to manage those cases where there may be 21 students in an advisory group differently than if there is only 15. Students for their lunch period will have 15 minutes for lunch, and they will have 15 minutes for study hall and advisory. Students will be eating the lunch in the following areas. They'll be in our cafeteria, in and around the auditorium area, with 6 feet of spacing between them while unmasked. And so we're going to be splitting advisory basically into 2 sections. and dividing those students up for lunch in order to meet the 6 feet social distancing requirement when unmasked. Obviously, we're going to do our best to have barriers when necessary. Each student is going to have an assigned seat. This is beneficial for contact tracing as well as for making sure that students are where they need to be. That's okay. Because of the large number of students that we're contending within a lunch period, students are going to have to stay in their seat for the duration of that period wherever they are assigned. They won't be able to move about or congregate, and so the socializing aspect of lunch, where they're all sitting at a large cafeteria table, will look very different this year, as we will be in student desks like many of the elementary schools have alluded to. Student masks must be immediately put on once they're done eating, and then of course, the recycling and the sanitizing is all part of a middle schooler's responsibility. Our goal, weather permitting, is to make sure that students are outside eating. We have, for those of you who've been to the middle school, we have yellow tape outside all around the exterior of the building that shows 6 feet in separation. We're going to continue to work on creating outdoor spaces where students are going to be able to basically eat outside as frequently with weather permitting. In addition, we have our courtyard where we do have a myriad of tables that were donated by the PTO years ago, where we can house a certain number of students at those picnic tables and areas as well. And so at this point, our implementation plan for lunch looks as follows. Again, all of this can change based upon any further guidance that we get from the NJDOE in reference to, our social distancing guidelines. I believe Dr. Lazovic is up for Ridge High School.
Thanks, Ms. Hudak.
Oh, thanks, Ms. Hudak. Ms. Hudak and I working together, a number of things are similar between Williams and Ridge. I just want to point out the things that are different. Obviously, when we return to our 9-minute day, we have a 4-minute passing time, and that is one of the areas where we are really looking for student cooperation before, after school, as well as during that passing time, making sure students are getting where they need to go and not congregating and breaking that 3 to 6 feet of required social distancing. Our building times are going to stay the same. So as far as arrival, we do expect, as Ms. Hudak said, more traffic in the morning. 7:15 is when students can gain access. Students will still need to show their daily entrance passes. And we're excited to welcome in almost another 50% of what we've been experiencing right now. So we're looking forward to having a solid number of students in the building. Some of the things that we will be able to change and will not be able to change. Senior privilege when we return to our 9-period day will finally be reinstated. So students that have those open periods in their schedule, either at the beginning or the end of the day, will be able to arrive late or dismiss early following our normal procedures of signing in and signing out. However, unfortunately, we are not going to be able to offer option 2 for the remainder of the year, as we've been required to, especially during our 5 lunch periods in our 9-period day, space students out at 6 feet. We simply do not have the coverage to make that happen at this point. There are no teachers to handle what would be extra study halls as students were removed from their gym classes. Difficult, obviously, at the high school level with certain niche classes as well as our general education, but our average class sizes range someplace now based on the responses to our selection form from 17 to 19 students per class. Our classrooms typically house anywhere from 25 to 28 desks. And so when we move back to that 3-foot distance from head to head, we're looking to hopefully, for the most part, be able to house all of our classes in their normal classrooms. When we made the initial switch earlier, 3rd marking period, we did have to move a number of classrooms to larger spaces, do some trading to make sure that we maintain 6 feet. Obviously 3 feet social distancing for our classroom settings will be easier as we get more students coming in. Obviously, as Ms. Hudak said, those activities that are required for 6 feet of social distancing, we're still able to ensure in those classes that 6 feet of social distancing does happen. Mr. Marcani?
Thank you, Dr. Lazovic.
Is there one more, I thought?
One more on lunches.
There we go. On lunches, the big topic, lunches. I want to reiterate what Ms. Hudak said, that this is not our normal lunch. It is not a social opportunity while we're eating. We're going to try and provide open space, but every single student in our current schedule already has an assigned seat, and those students returning to in-person instruction will as well. Those assigned seats are 6 feet socially distanced from each other, whether in the cafeteria or in the pack. We're also having to use, depending on the period, certain classrooms which will need to be covered, but those seating charts will also be assigned, and they will be 6 feet. There will be 6 feet of social distance between. We need every single student's cooperation on this. We want to make sure that we maintain school open for the remainder of the year, that everyone stays healthy, and that everyone gets to enjoy all the end of the year activities we are still working hard to plan for. And so we need everyone's cooperation during lunch periods. You know, we mentioned the assigned seats, no congregating. Obviously, Mr. Markarian mentioned that any food would have to be brought in by the student. Masks should be worn whenever a student is not eating. As Ms. Hudak mentioned, students are expected to clear their own trash and recycling, help keep the area clean for the next incoming group of students. And after the first week of our full 9-period schedule, we will be looking to move. We have a different situation than the middle school, but looking to create space for students outside during their lunch period so they can get fresh air and get out and about. Mr. Markarian.
Thank you.
The end of year activities, as Ms. Hudak said, we are anxiously awaiting that the guidance from the NJDOE, but it is our goal. We've been working in every way possible to ensure that all of our end of year activities can happen in some way, shape, or form. We are still planning everything that you see there: proms, awards night, our senior breakfast or day, certainly graduation, and we are still in contact and trying to figure out what we can do for our project graduation bash. Obviously, please, just reminding parents and students, please check your email regularly. We're sending updates on these things on an almost weekly basis. As the situation changes, we're trying to keep everyone updated. Mr. Markarian.
All right, thank you, Dr. Lazovic. So again, thanks to Ms. O'Connell and to all of our principals for being here. I know they'll be around for board member questions. I just appreciate them helping out tonight and sharing their thoughts and plans for each of their buildings. There are a few things I wanted to kind of touch on as we try to wrap this up. And that is, first of all, travel and spring break. And travel has just been sort of an interesting issue that we have all been trying to follow along with during the course of this pandemic. Guidance has been changing here and there, and seems to have changed most recently again last week on Friday, April 2nd, and then New Jersey trying to catch up to what the CDC has said. Even today, I noticed that their website changed, so I did put both of those links there. And you know, at this point, what we're doing is we're asking everyone to be responsible for themselves in following the guidance that the CDC and the Department of Health is putting out there. And by that, I mean, if you believe you have been exposed to COVID-19 during travel, you should follow the quarantine guidance in those documents. If you are not traveling, but you wish to be virtual for the week of April 19th, the week immediately following spring break, we are accommodating that for all of our students. So if a student travels somewhere and they know that they stood an opportunity of being exposed to COVID-19, and they say, hey, I need to follow the quarantine guidance, we want them to let the schools know. The schools will make them virtual for the time period that they are serving a travel quarantine, which is a minimum of 7 days if they need to serve a travel quarantine. If someone is not traveling, but wants to serve a travel quarantine because they're just concerned that maybe other people traveled a lot and they don't want to be around other people and they're concerned about it, well, we will accommodate that as well for the 1 week immediately following spring break. What people need to do is follow the instructions of their principals. I asked the principals to prepare to communicate with their parents tomorrow. I asked them to wait until after tonight's presentation and communicate to parents tomorrow as to how they should let them know at each school if they need to place a child on that quarantine period for that week after spring break. There's not going to be a penalty for attendance. Obviously, we are talking about a minimum of a week here, not Monday, Tuesday, but a week. because a travel quarantine is a minimum of 7 days. There will not be any negative reflection on the attendance record. We will move the student to virtual. Obviously, students need to show up for their virtual activities, or there would be an indication of being marked absent, but we will happily move folks to virtual for that week, even if they haven't traveled, no penalty whatsoever. And obviously, if you actually do travel and you know that you stood a chance of being exposed and you don't want to be in school because you need to follow the guidance, of course, we're going to accommodate that as well. And as I said, the principals will communicate about that issue tomorrow. Just to reiterate what Dr. Lazovic mentioned, we know there's a lot that we're trying to communicate, and we are asking parents to try to keep up with the emails. We appreciate that you're probably getting a little sick of all the constant communication perhaps, but it's just been a lot this year, and we certainly appreciate your due diligence and patience with us as we are constantly sending you things to read. We appreciate that very much. This guidance that was recently updated, as I read these two documents, and these are pretty much hot off the presses, is that new guidance is specifically for individuals who are fully vaccinated. And there are changes with respect to the travel guidance for fully vaccinated persons in being allowed to travel without having to quarantine upon return from travel as a fully vaccinated individual. So I would just encourage you to read those guidance documents because they would have an impact on what you would need to do upon returning from travel. This close contact issue, as I described earlier, we are still working with the 6 feet and the 15-minute rule. We do have quarantine going for 14 days for identified close contacts. I just wanted to mention that, one of the great things about trying to have more students in school is that we have more students in school. One of the challenging things is that if you do have an individual that comes to school and they are positive for COVID, you have more students that may have been exposed by that individual. And so I would just caution people to understand that we still have close contact enforcement that we need to do if somebody comes to school positive. And if students are seated 3 feet apart and the close contact rule is 6 feet, we're going to have more students that need to serve quarantines. So that's kind of the trade-off when you have more students coming to school. Just trying to share that and give people a little bit of forethought on that issue. We may have to deal with that. I talked about the Cali scores earlier, wanting to keep track of what's going on locally, but also certainly hoping to try to get to yellow or better with respect to how we're doing health-wise. And really a big shout out to our community and our staff for all of their efforts to help us in this regard. I know that a lot of people have sacrificed a lot and done a lot to try to help us stay healthy, and we certainly appreciate that in the schools. As many of the principals alluded to, and this is all the schools, I know the elementary schools are working on making preparations for end of the year events in addition to the middle school and the high school. Honestly, probably the right word is tentative. They are making tentative plans. We have been told for the last couple of weeks that we are going to receive guidance on what we can and can't do with regard to end of year events and graduations. And we are all waiting on that very much, looking forward to understanding what we can and can't do so that we can move forward with our plans and communicate those plans to the public. So we appreciate your patience as we are also patiently waiting for that information. One other thing I just wanted to mention, a few of the principals talked about outdoor seating. I just wanted to thank our business office because I know that the business office was working with the schools and recently made a significant purchase working with the principals to order some furniture for outside, basically in the form of picnic tables. My understanding is that those items should be delivered and set up during the week that we're away for spring break. So that timing should work out pretty well. And I just want to mention that and thank them for helping the schools with that. And that's about it. So thanks for your attention tonight. With that, I will stop sharing here and just offer the opportunity for any of our board members that may have questions.
Board members, questions? Mrs. Richmond.
I just wanted to say that I'm one of the people that had the big concerns and reservations about the lunch periods and eating and unmasking and in schools. But after hearing all of your presentations tonight, I do feel a lot of relief and a lot better about it. And I think that your plans are really good. And I want to thank you all for putting, I know it's been a really hard year and you guys have been through the ringer. And I do appreciate all of the effort and time that you guys have been putting into trying to keep everybody, the teachers, the staff, the students, and everybody safe. I really, our goal obviously is to get all the kids back to school. And I do think that you've given us a really good outline of what you're going to do. And I appreciate everything you guys did today for this presentation, because I feel a little bit of relief and I feel a lot better about the whole thing.
Other board members? Mrs. Korn?
I don't really have a question. I just have a statement to make about opening because I think it's really important, but I want to jump on Karen and what Karen said and say, very detailed. The work that you guys put in was so impressive and it really should allay a lot of fears that Karen said. In saying that, I also wanted to say that first, I do think that opening schools is really important for a lot of reasons. But first, I wanted to acknowledge the really hard work being done by the health department and the nurses during the last 54 weeks. It was an amazing amount of work, given that we have gone a year beyond the original expectation. The administration also deserves major kudos for trying to keep our kids' education on track and pivoting to the 2 weeks of online schooling that actually ballooned to 18 weeks on 2 days notice, which was like a huge accomplishment for our school district. And it includes the 2 weeks that we had to flatten the curve, which expanded to the rest of the 2020 school year, then changed again when Governor Murphy and the New Jersey Department of Education announced in July of 2020 that instead of all schools having to offer some sort of in-person learning in September of 2020, they must also allow parents to have an all remote option, which also we handled with great aplomb, if that's the right word. It was a whole lot of a pivoting in a very short amount of time with very little quality guidance from the state. And I think everyone did a great job. But it does sadden and frighten me that after all this time, an entire year beyond the 2 weeks to flatten the curve, that we are still hemming and hawing about getting our kids back to school. The real question here is, are we going to stop making decisions based on fear and strive for hope? I really think this plan does. It strives for hope. It looks towards the future with hope and not fear. And because there have been multiple studies that show the best and safest place for kids is to be in school. There are studies cited by the CDC that show that in-school transmission is very low, even with high community spread. When all mitigating strategies are in place, which they are, and all of our Berners Township schools have done a great job with their strategies or mitigating strategies. And our own numbers show the same, which is extremely low in school transmissions. But it's more than a bit unsettling that every time we get close to the benchmark set to reopen, the goalposts are moved. It started with 2 weeks to flatten the curve, then expanded from death counts to positive cases. So instead of flattening the curve, we were told we have to eliminate the virus, which is really impossible. We were told that once we started getting the vaccine in the arms of all the vulnerable people, we were safe to reopen. And now that the vaccinating is happening at a furious rate, which is wonderful, we are told that we still can't reopen. It's really shaken my confidence I have in our decision makers, and honestly, being jerked back and forth regarding reopening and having our leaders dangle benchmarks in front of us and then just to change them at the last minute, it's really not good for anyone's mental health. And I have to say, especially for our kids' mental health. Like, we should be making decisions based on what we know is happening and not what we think might happen. What we do know is that the data is there, that from the data is that there were 246 COVID deaths in the 0 to 17 age group since the beginning of the pandemic. This is out of 38,993 total deaths among that age group in the same time frame. That's like one half of 1% of all deaths for that age group that were COVID related. But we still have 300,000 kids in New Jersey that have not seen the inside of a classroom. And it's sad, it's really sad. And 95% of all COVID deaths have occurred in adults over 45 years old. So the good news is our swift vaccination of teachers should be enough to open the schools because we're protecting people who would be the most vulnerable in the schools, which is great news. But the more disturbing statistic is that I read was being that 52% of white US high school students considered attempting suicide in the last year. And this is something that really should frighten most people. These are the data points we know. A further positive data point would be the COVID rates in Burns Township. We're not a regional school district, and the numbers in our town are in line with reopening safely for the full day. According to the Burns Township update number 70 from the health department site, there were 179 new cases for the month of March as of April 1st. And that's great news. That is much less than half of 1% of the population, which is about 27,000. And this should be great news and really that is a reason for us to move forward safely. With the proven loss of learning, the obvious mental health impact, and the fact that kids are not super spreaders or as vulnerable to the disease, we should be doing all that's in our power to get back to as much normalcy as possible. The scary thing is being that the kids are now forgetting what normal feels like, which is not great. It's not normal to come home from school or middle school or high school at 12:15 or 12:30 and just lay down and take a nap. That's not normal. It's not normal to be afraid to play with your friends or walk past people on the street. It's not normal not to be able to run outside playing and laughing without a mask. And getting kids back to normalcy, I think, is the best thing for them. We have to move forward, and we have the safety measures in place. It's going to be good for everyone to see that this can happen safely. We still have the virtual option for all those who want it. We have also proven that if the numbers go up, we have the ability to pivot and step back if necessary. Programs can be tweaked as needed on an ongoing basis because people have all their questions about what their kids will be missing out or what because if going to this new plan. We have the data, and the data on children not being in school is not good data. We have the learned experience of our own schools open for the past 6 months with no vaccination. We have managed it very well. Now, when the majority of adults are going to be vaccinated, is not the time to move backwards at all. I think we have to keep moving forward. We're going to have to stop planning our lives in 2 to 4 week what-if scenarios because it doesn't really benefit anyone. And I have full confidence in the Burns Township school administrators, the staff, the teachers, the board members, as well as our entire community, that we have all the best interests of our children at the forefront. Nothing's perfect. No one said it's going to be, but things can't change for the better unless we start on the long road back to normal. Thank you. And I appreciate everything you guys have done. And I think everyone's worked really super hard. And I hope that we can just keep going forward the way we're going. Thanks.
Board members, did anyone have any questions? Mrs. McCune, I see your hand.
Sorry. Yeah, I think everybody, we've been moving forward, obviously not as quickly as what a lot of people would like to see. Unfortunately, the data didn't go the right way in the different waves of COVID that hit, in the fall and winter. I think, we've been moving forward steadily, since this winter, bringing back both cohorts and now, bringing back more kids. I think, we have been doing a really good job doing it carefully, and the plans that were presented tonight in the meeting are all very detailed and thoughtful. So I am optimistic. I think that does show a lot of hope that we're going to move back to normal, but obviously not as fast as we'd all like to see. And so I do feel optimistic that we're getting there. And so, I agree with a lot of what Ms. Korn said in terms of hopefulness towards the future. But I do think we have been very careful and thoughtful and deliberative, in our decisions as we move forward. And I think that's a good thing. And that's, I think, a lot of the reason that our data does look better than a lot of other places. So I just wanted to say that.
Thanks, Mrs. McCune. Mrs. White.
What I'm going to say now is kind of similar to what I said back in October, can't believe, which is, I'm sure that there's some people in the community that are listening and they are so excited by our plans to move forward. And I'm sure that there are some in the community and listening and they are not happy. And I'm sure we'll hear from everybody at public comment which side of the fence you're on. But I just really want to say that we as a board, while we listen to everybody and their particular opinion, and some people will say, well, it seems like you listen to the loudest group of people. But the reality is we listen to everyone, but the decisions that we make based on what we as a group feel is best for the Berners Township students. And I think that's really what has motivated us to trust that this plan is the right time and the right way to start working. And as both Jen and Robin said, it's built in that if in the next few weeks that there is something that drastically changes, we can pivot, but we're prepared. And for months and months and months, parents been saying, what is your plan? What's the plan for return to school? So now a very, very detailed plan has been outlined for, K through 12. Does it mean everything is perfect? Does it mean that there won't need to be things that are tweaked? Because until you really have all the kids in each building, you're not quite sure, is this exactly what needs to work, or do I need to switch something? But I have faith and I do have hope that we are getting back to normalcy. And I think, this will really, really help with the kids ending the school year feeling so much happier. Is it great that they can't socialize during lunch? No, but they're getting their education, which is really the priority, and the rest will come, when they're outside. We will find ways, but this is a step that it's time that we take. And I really thank you all, because I too had lots and lots of questions, and I feel like every single administrator touched upon everything that was running through my head about, well, what about this and what about that? So thank you very much.
Mr. Salmon.
I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. One was the work that Mr. Saya did, and the leadership of the BTEA to work to partner with Atlantic Health to work to get our administrators and staff vaccines, because I know that probably everybody knows that the other method was the hunt and peck route, and to kind of get this large group of people vaccinated before before the end of the school year would have been really, really difficult if we had to rely on that. So I'm really glad that Sean and Melanie and the rest of the folks at the BTA were coordinated and working with Atlantic Health to get that done. And if I was a teacher, I would feel much more comfortable about coming in with full all kids, full days after I was vaccinated. So I'm glad we had that opportunity. I'm really thankful that Ms. O'Connell has extended the ESY program in the summer for special needs students. I think that's going to be really beneficial for them, especially if they've lost out on time from virtual. So, and then just the last thing is I hope we hear, obviously any change we make like this is uncertain and we don't know what's going to happen, but we're doing it in a stepwise approach, which I really favor. And I'm just hoping we hear more reports from, students like Mr. Ciampola heard about, like, really, jazzed out about going to library. So that would be good to hear in the future from the rest of the staff and administration, but I'm fully supportive of the plan. Thank you.
Anybody else? I agree with a lot of what's been said, so I'll try to be brief and just say kind of piggybacking on Mr. Salmon because he was the last one to speak. Thank you to Mr. Syed and to Ms. Dupuy for your unbelievable efforts. I've heard just from people within the community, the appreciation. I agree with the plan going forward. I think something that resonates in the back of my head is the number of people who shared after we went from the cohorting to 4 or 5 days in school, depending on your grade level. The positive messaging from parents, both, when I ran into people or when they wrote to us or reached out by phone to say thank you, the difference in my students' outward evidence of their mental health is so clear. They're happier. They're grateful to be in the classroom or just to be able to have that routine of a place to go that feels like what they know they're supposed to be doing, and with being prepared to pivot as necessary. And I think that we are, as others have said, support the plan that we have in place. And thank you to all of the administrative team for being here tonight with us and sharing all of the hard work or the evidence of the hard work of just a little bit of what goes into what you've been doing. So thank you. I think maybe that's it from board members, Mr. Markarian. So I guess we're on to if there's anything else for superintendent's report.
Oh, that was just the first presentation. There's another one coming up.
Right. Well, that's what. Oh, there's 2 presentations before superintendent's report?
No, I think I'm all caught up for tonight.
All right. I was going to say, I don't think I read my agenda right.
That's all from me for tonight. I think you've tolerated enough from me. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. With that, we are on to public comment on agenda items. Mr. Syed, how are things going in that department?
We have 4 folks in the waiting room, so we'll start with them and then we'll move on to the written public comment. So just a reminder for folks in the waiting room, I'll admit you and I'll say your name. If you could just make sure your microphone is on and state your full name and address when we admit you. So we'll start with the first person is Juliet Auslander, and we will admit now. Okay, we can see you, Juliet. And if you unmute.
Oh, me?
Yes, hi there.
Hi, hello. I'm Juliet Auslander, and I live on 12 Charter Court, and I'm a junior at Ridge High School. And I would like to say thank you so much for all the work that you do. It is great. Yeah, but I would like to say is that I am very, very cautious about full schedules as a person who will go into a full schedule. And I would like to say that my opinion is only for myself. It is only for Ridge High School students. I cannot speak for anyone at Annan or anyone in the elementary schools. This is only for myself. So I would like to say, I'd like to start off with that I go into the hallways every single day. I'm an in-person student 4 days a week, and I go into the hallways and people are not wearing their mask correctly. I walked from first period to second period today. It's a short walk. It's not across the entire school. And I saw 5 people with their masks under their nose. That's not correct mask wearing technique. And it made me extremely uncomfortable because that's not how you wear a mask during a pandemic. And I saw more during my walks all around the school. I forgot to count just because it got too overwhelming because, again, the hallways are the worst part of the school day because it is the most unpredictable. There's the most students out at a time. Like in the classrooms are very regulated and they're very safe. And there are less students, but then you go into the hallways and it's kind of a rush to get to the next class and people are just very close, and it is for a short time, but it is extremely uncomfortable. Like I walk into the building and I already am just uncomfortable. I do not like being at school. I need to be there and I like being there because I like seeing my friends and I like seeing people because I need that. But going into school is a very uncomfortable experience for me. I do like education though. I do like education very much. Also, on NBC.com, there was an article that I saw that New Jersey had the 12th highest infection rate. We did talk about how New Jersey is in the orange zone, and I'm very glad it's in the orange zone. But like Mr. Markarian said, there is a rising trend, and I mean this in the most respectful way possible. This is a rhetorical question. I don't mean this in any accusing way, but how can it be justified to increase the amount of time children are spending in school when the infection rate is still very high and cases are rising, when children cannot be vaccinated? I just personally do not understand that. But again, I don't mean that accusingly at all. I mean that very, very politely. I know that there is no perfect solution at all for the way that schools can be run. There is no perfect solution. It's just the least painful. But I definitely think that the half-day schedule is working perfectly well. I have talked to my friends, I've talked to my classmates, and they all agree that half-days suit them and their needs the best, because they have time to schedule themselves in a free manner. Like, they have time to go over the material again, and they have time to get jobs or to do what they are interested in. Like, I am in the drama club, and I know that if a full schedule started again, I would have way less time and I would be way more stressed. But yes, and also this is also the 5th change in the schedule since the pandemic has started, and no other change in my life has happened in my education. It's been, the same pre-pandemic, and then suddenly the pandemic has hit, and there were 5 different changes in the schedule, and every single time I had to readjust, and that was very disconcerting. But I don't mean this accusingly at all. I mean it very politely, but I do hope I make you think, and hopefully you do not turn to a full schedule. But I hope you have a very lovely night, and you had a very happy Easter. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Juliet. Okay, the next person in the waiting room is Lakshmi Natarajan, and I will try to admit now. Just remember to put your microphone. Oh, there we go. This is working seamlessly tonight. And if you could just unmute yourself.
Yes. Hi,
Yes.
good evening,
Good
everyone.
evening.
Thank you for the opportunity. I just had quick points.
Could you just state your address for the record, please?
Oh, yes. I am Lakshmi Natarajan. I live on 10 Dickinson Road, Basking Ridge. And so I have 2 kids, one going to elementary and one going into one in high school. I see that, this has been a very hard for us because we've been virtual throughout the school year. So to gather enough courage to actually come into school is a big deal for us. This is like September for the kids who are moving from virtual to in person. And I think the reason I'm even as a parent being pushed into sending my daughter to school is because my kids really want it. They want to come in, experience the last year in elementary or just experience high school. But as a parent, I feel that there's, with the vaccination, I'm glad that the teachers are getting vaccinated, but does that really translate for better outcomes for students? Because, parents are traveling, they could be exposed, coming from different places, and then they could transfer to the other kids, and then we get it. And I'm in line also for vaccination. So I don't know when I'm getting it. My name is on the list from January and it's still not up yet. So there's a little tension, nervousness to send the kids for a full day, and half day itself is overwhelming. I think we're just like holding our hearts in our hands and sending our kids. I also just want to mention that most of the work is being done on the computer. And there's hardly any trace of paper and pencil and that route for education. So the high schooler really has a lot of homework and she's doing perfectly fine except for the social aspect. So the only reason I'm really sending my elementary is to get that little feel of, okay, it's not as bad. And, I'm just going to school and then doing it. But most of her friends tell her that everything's on the computer. There's not much difference. And then there's like, the social aspects in the recess and lunchtime is kind of minimal. It's not what you would expect in a regular school time. So, but still we're okay with that so that she feels close to normal. But why couldn't, if we just have a half day, wouldn't be enough to get that little social in, and at the same time, they could do all their work on the computer. They could have homework, extra homework, just come back, take the masks off, and just continue for the rest of the year, at least this academic year, to do it the way you've been doing it so far. And I think 5 days itself is a lot. Like I said, this is like September for the kids who are coming in, as from virtual to in person. So although I have confidence in all the staff, and I was at the presentation from the beginning to the end, so I am feeling a little confident, but there's always this little tiny fear in the back of the mind. So my plea is just to keep it as half day for at least for the rest of the year, and then have better plans for September. And by the time I think more population, at least the parents, would get vaccinated. But that's basically what I wanted to tell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next person in the waiting room is Linda C. I don't have a last name. Linda, can you hear us? Linda? I might put Linda back in the waiting room and try our other person. Linda? Okay, I'm going to put her back in the waiting room. We'll try Carolyn. Is the other person in the waiting room. Carolyn, can you hear us? Okay. Carolyn? Okay, I'm going to put them back in the waiting room. I'd ask those two folks to submit a comment through email then, because I'm going to start reading the email comments. And we do have several of those. So I'm going to start now. The first public comment is from Cara Attilio Cooper at 14 Mayflower Drive. Hello and thank you. I'm strongly advocating for you to please allow students and teachers to have the choice to remove their masks when they're seated at their desks the way we do in restaurants when we're seated at our tables. Clean oxygen is imperative in a growing brain, especially under an atmosphere of learning. Wearing masks is not an actual law, but a mandate, which is different. So you have the freedom to make this happen. My third grader and I were thrilled to hear school was headed towards full days, but then he sadly realized he won't be able to stand a full day wearing a mask. It's a very sad thing, and we can do something about this. We do not have to be so strict. Furthermore, I do hope I can assume the children are free to take their masks off whenever they're outside, be it in recess or what have you. Anything different is going against real science, which shows over and over how masks outside are useless. Thank you. Okay, the next public comment is Heather Watson Kramer, 84 Liberty Corner Road. Dear Mr. Markarian and Board of Ed members, thank you so much for everything you are doing for our students. I know how hard you have and continue to work to get our students safely back into the buildings for more in-person teaching. While I love the idea of school returning to a full day, I'm writing today to express my concern about the students eating their lunches at school. Our family has not eaten inside a restaurant since March 2020, and the thought of my children having to remove their masks inside of the building to eat their lunches is making me nervous, especially with the increased class size and limited ability to social distance. I'm asking that there be an outside dining option at all schools. This will allow the students to eat their lunches safely and take a mask break during the longer days. If this is not possible, then I'm asking you to leave the school day as it is currently until more people are fully vaccinated and the infection numbers are on the decline. The next public comment is from Kalpana Mystery at 476 Lyons Road. Dear Superintendent Markarian and members of the BOE, I'm writing to say thank you for bringing the kids back full-time in May. The impact that in-person schooling has made on my kindergarten has been incredible. Prior to the change in January, my daughter was struggling, especially with reading and writing. We're just over 2 months into 5 half days in person, and per her teacher, her growth is remarkable and has so much to do with her willingness to take risks and her desire to learn. When she was home with me, there was zero desire to learn or take risks. That only happens in the classroom. The environment, the socialization, the connection to your teachers and peers, all of that matters. School is so much more than sitting at your desk, virtually or in person. It's the interactions, it's the learning from each other, it's the hands-on lessons that can only happen when in person. So thank you again for finally doing right by our children and giving them a chance to grow their minds and reach their full potential by going to school in person. Thank you for listening. The next public comment is from Cynthia Kirschner, 16 Lenape Court. Dear Mr. Markarian and board, first I'd like to say how thrilled my kids are to go back to school full time. There's been such an obvious difference in my children since the switch to 5 days, and I can only imagine how much better it will be come May 3rd. My second grader actually squealed with delight when she found out she was going to be able to actually go into the library last week. These little things make such a huge difference. My question this evening is, how do you foresee the week after spring break going? I imagine there will be many families in quarantine, and our schools prepared for a large influx of students zooming in from home that week. Will these students have access to live instruction? Will they follow a similar pattern to what they had during the cohort days? Is there a plan in place to accommodate everyone? Next public comment is from Kristen McInerney, 4 Quincy Road. Good evening. My children are so excited to be going back to school full time. We have seen a vast difference in both of my children's academic learning and social emotional well-being since they have been back 5 half days, and I know it will only get better come May 3rd. We are looking forward to finishing out the 2020-2021 year with full days and getting back to a normal full-time school schedule come September. Let's see, the next public comment is from Ramya Ramamarthy at 23 Raleigh Court. Appreciate all the hard work in keeping our schools open and safe for the past year during these trying times. Couple of questions. One, I see that we are including recess in the full day program. Is that just outdoor free play and open area, or are playgrounds open too? If playgrounds are open, what are the plans and processes in place for cleaning the surfaces? 2, why are we not considering a week of virtual schooling after the spring break? It worked great when we came back in January. Why not now? The scenario in New Jersey is not very different now, and considering the current rate of transmission of COVID and the fact that more people are currently out given the warmer weather, it seems like a safer option. Please do consider this. Next public comment is from Linda Chen, 10 Hampton Court. I am writing to show my support for the decision to return to full day school. I've been waiting for this decision since last spring, and I'm very happy we are finally moving forward. Recently, I had a conference call with my daughter's teacher because I was concerned with her math results, which had declined from her prior test. It was very upsetting because the number one reason for her lack of improvement was due to the half-day school offered and being in a hybrid program for most of the year. When we returned to school 5 days a week, she said she likes being in school every day. In my conference call with her teacher recently, her teacher agreed that she performs much better in school and she is more attentive. In addition, she sees that she is improving faster now that she is in school 5 days. Think about how much more she can improve with 5 full days of school, even if it's only for 30 days. It's 30 days for her to make greater improvement. I fully support the decision to return to school full time, and I hope this decision will move forward not only for my daughter, but for all the children who want to return to school 5 full days. Thank you for your decision to move to 5 full days. It is the right decision, and I fully support this decision for all children who want to return to school full time. The next public comment is from Daria Bendikian, 86 Childs Road. There is no reason to wait until May to open schools full time. During the last BOE meeting, it was proposed to increase the tax levy again. This is despite the fact that over the past year, students had no access to the adequate education. In 2020-21 school year, the time middle and high school students are spending with their teachers decreased by 40%, yet per pupil spendings increased by 7%, mostly driven by salaries and benefits. In other words, the cost of 1 hour of learning in this district nearly doubled year of year. At the same time, parents are forced to pay unplanned and unprecedented amounts to tutors, virtual learning assistants, and learning centers to supplement the missing education. This is in addition to the learning pods and childcare during virtual days and quarantines. Since the district collects the tax money in full and keeps increasing the levy, parents should have the right to demand a service in return. Schools should be back to full day now, not in May. By now, all at-risk adults had an opportunity to be vaccinated. Current model and so-called status quo are not enough. Lunches can't be used as an excuse. Please open schools full time, 5 days a week as soon as possible. Thank you. Next public comment is from Andra Schwab, 55 Countryside Drive. Hello, I wanted to articulate my wholehearted support for the back to school in-person full-time plan. I also love the strategy that allows the school to adapt to an increase in attendance the first week on current schedule. As project manager, I wanted to say that it is plain smart and signals a real commitment to getting back to normal in my view. Sure, there are flaws with this plan brought about in part by too many options to stay home and the gradual dismantling of those decisions that I hope we learn from in the future. But the wind must start to sway in the direction of normalcy. This is a step that needs to be taken. We need to start pushing the students and teachers outside of the comfort of this half-day schedule and framework if there's any chance of real school next year. Oftentimes, it isn't until one experiences that discomfort and adjusts that the needed change begins to take hold, and our children will learn critical coping skills more valuable than any calculus. Putting it off any further will just increase the complacency and amplify the dread some with anxiety may feel, in my opinion at least. When I saw how angry and disillusioned my son was when he got home today, explaining that he was bummed by kids complaining about missing the easier half-day schedule, and he was worried regular school would never come back, I promised him I would take the time to express this. So I thank you for your time and consideration. The next public comment is from Stacy Suggs, 297 Lyons Road. For the high school students, the block schedule has been working well for the entire year, and it is my understanding that next year Ridge will be switching to a block schedule. Therefore, why would we change high school student schedules again by returning to full day instruction every day for the last 6 weeks of the school year? For those who are virtual, this is a very long time to be required to be online. I understand the need for younger students to be in person full time, but I do not see how this is necessary for the high school students. Next public comment is from Jennifer Donahoe, 126 Dykeman Place. 4 in district, 3 at Ridge. I need 2 to have a transition period. Have not packed a lunch in a year and a half. Can we drop lunch? And can seniors leave for lunch? Would lessen kids eating together. Thank you. The next public comment is from Fred Rossi, 127 Galloping Hill Road. What are the criteria for contact tracing? Is there a time component that expands the contact traced distance? The next public comment is from Stacy Molinari, 27 Franklin Drive. I am writing in support of all schools opening full-time for the remainder of the school year with in-person learners learning from a teacher in front of them and not via Zoom while in the classroom, and that this remain the standard moving forward through the end of this year and continuing next year. Also to say that this should start immediately for all, including grades 6 to 12, regardless of Cali, and without the adjustment week, April 26, which seems totally unnecessary. In addition, I wanted to draw your attention to an announcement made that St. James Bulletin this week. St. James School is expecting a nearly 30% increase in their enrollment next year. If a small school in our town is able to accommodate an increase this large safely, why haven't we been able to until this point? Also, because I believe a large part of it is due to extreme disappointment in the public school system in our district this year and how let down the community feels. Deciding to finally open schools with 6 weeks remaining is nothing to be proud of, and steps need to be taken to ensure that moving forward, you correct all the issues you have created by remaining virtual to such a large degree. In addition, you have moved the goalpost multiple times on what would be required for reopening. It will never be perfection, nor will you make everyone 100% happy. At this point, there is no reason for not opening and staying open fully, regardless of vaccination status or fear. In-person, full-time instruction is a very basic necessity. That is your responsibility to make sure is met for our children. Thank you. The next public comment is from Terry Laird, 20 Laureline Drive. Thank you for everything you do to balance the safety of our children and families with the desire for maximum time in the classroom. On a different topic, this is an other public comment then. I'm going to save that for the second part of public comment. Next public comment is Lisa Pruce, 85 Springhouse Lane. Dear Mr. Markarian and BOE members, now that the CDC requirements for distancing have been decreased to 3 feet, students should be able to attend in person for 5 full days. I appreciate that the goal is to have the students in person for full days starting on May 3rd. However, I'm urging you to please keep to this date to get the students in the classroom for 5 full days of in-person instruction. The numbers we have in our district and in our town do not justify keeping these children out of school for those that would like their children to go full-time and get the education they need and deserve. Our leadership at all levels has failed our children. Additionally, please comment on providing parents a concrete plan for 5 full days of in-person instruction in the fall. Please help our children and ensure that they return to full-time instruction as soon as possible. The next public comment is from Megan Fedor, 26 Victoria Drive. Thank you, thank you, thank you, all of you. What a Herculean effort this is. We are so appreciative of 5 full days. High school locker rooms. Are locker rooms going to be open for changing in gym classes and or for after-school sports? The next public comment is from Brendan O'Connor, 11 Forbes Court. A few days ago, I emailed a suggestion to Mr. Markarian and the board to make in-person attendance optional for the week after we return from break. I was very happy to see my suggestion included in tonight's presentation. For the record, my children attend Ridge High School in person, and I'm happy they do so. It's the best thing for them, but I want all district parents to have flexibility to make informed decisions for their children. Prior experience has shown that caseloads spike after extended school breaks. I hope that does not happen again. Thank you, Mr. Markarian and BOE. And to all community members, I've heard public comment which suggests that the administration and our board is not listening or does not care. This is not true, and my experience tonight reflects very positively on everybody involved. Please keep up the great work. The next public comment. This is from the person that was in the room. I need your address. We don't have an address on this. If you could submit your address, I can read the public comment. The next public comment is from Shelley and Bob Gustafson, 10 Birch Drive. Thank you to our teachers, administrators, and board members for your ongoing commitment to our children. Please share more about the support for the still significant number of virtual students, considering the longer days they will be online now. The next public comment is from Lynn Noisky, 39 Linden Drive. Governor Murphy stated virtual learning will still be an option for teachers and students with health issues in the 21-22 school year. Additionally, he announced school districts will determine who specifically will be allowed to participate in virtual learning. When will you determine this criteria for our school district? Will anyone, even those students without serious health issues, be able to opt into our virtual program? Thank you. The next public comment is from Adrika Chattaraj at 6 Wharton Way. As a high school student, I would feel uncomfortable eating lunch and taking off masks at school. Further, Wednesdays are already a marathon for virtual students. Doing that 5 days is absolutely tiring. And next public comment, Vanessa Lombardo, 15 Joanna Court. Dear Mr. Markarian and BOE members, I'm writing in full support of the 5 full-day schedule for May 3rd and going forward for fall 2021. I commend you on your decision to start full day in person. My kids were beyond overjoyed when I shared the news and are so excited to be back full time. After watching the elementary presentations, can you please explain why every other elementary school has moved larger classes to other rooms or brought back virtual teachers except for Cedar Hill? 5th grade classes have gone from 17 to 19 to 21 to 22. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Okay, the next public comment is from Carolyn Union, 4 Hale Court. Can you comment on why we are moving to full day rather than staying with half days? Also, what metrics are you watching that might change the plans we have to going back to full days in early May? And that is all of the written public comment, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Syed. Mr. Markarian, is there anything you'd like to try to address at this time?
Mr. Syed, it looks like there's one person in the waiting room that I think might have made a public comment. I'm not sure. Maybe you want to see if we can let them in. And
let me see. I'm sorry. I didn't look back in the waiting room.
Oh, that's okay. I just noticed it.
Yes, that is true. That person did make a comment already. I can admit them though.
Yeah.
Let's see here. It's Andrea Schwab. Let's see.
I don't know if it was the same person, but it may have been.
I believe it is. Ms. Schwab, can you hear us? It says you're connecting.
Okay, well, I'll see what I can do here in response to your question, Madam President. So I think there was a question about allowing mask removal in school. We did receive a requirement that masks remain on in school as a minimum standard. That came out in the summer, and that has not been changed. There are some provisions under which the mask can come off. Obviously, eating is one of those. when students are doing vigorous activity and they need to take their mask off to breathe, they can take their masks off in those situations. But generally speaking, they are to keep them on, especially sitting in class. On the subject of playgrounds, I think there was a question about whether or not the playground equipment would be open. We specifically talked about that as a group with the with the elementary school principals with respect to things like the swings and the climbing equipment, or the, I'm gonna not say the right word, but the apparatus that the students would climb around on, because we can't really sanitize that very well, and agreed that that wasn't gonna be something that we were gonna allow at the elementary schools. Comment about being closed after spring break. So we're not planning on being closed after spring break. Another person commented about the flexibility to allow students to be virtual that week if they want to be, because they're concerned about that week. And as I mentioned earlier tonight, I am asking principals to follow up on that one issue in particular, so that each of them can handle collecting that information from parents in whichever way works best for them, because it is another labor of love to go in and assign students to be virtual for a temporary period of time. And so however each principal wants to handle that, I'm sure they'll communicate with you about it. There was a variety of comments about not waiting to bring students back full time, but to do it immediately. I think that kind of falls into the bucket of what some of our board members talked about in trying to balance things. We understand that opinions are going to differ here, and that we're not going to make everyone happy however we go on this decision. Some thank yous about moving in what people perceive to be the right direction in getting kids back to school full time. Other folks expressing that they felt like a block was working well. Why change now? Just to be clear, when we talk about block scheduling and rotating drop scheduling, we don't want to create any misunderstandings there. Block scheduling and rotating drop scheduling are not exactly the same things, and we're looking to move to a rotating drop schedule at Ridge High School, which implies a length of a period that's more like 55 to 60 minutes. Block schedules are typically 80-minute periods. So be that as it may, we do recognize, obviously, that there's certainly something to be said for, hey, it's working now, let's leave it alone for the last 6 or 7 weeks of the school year. But I think what the sentiment is, with respect to what we heard tonight from a presentation perspective and a board perspective, was a desire to try to take a step forward in getting back to a level of normalcy, and certainly, yes, it's another change. Somebody else mentioned we've been through a lot of changes, now another change, and that's true, it is another change. But it's a change for the sake of trying to show that we can do it and we can get back to normalcy. And as our board members pointed out, if something goes sideways and we can't do it, then we'll pivot and we'll deal with it as it comes. I think somebody asked about just completely dropping lunch. We really can't do that if we're having a full day. We need to have an opportunity for the students to eat. There's a question about contact tracing and time. I exchanged several emails with the individual that asked the question already, and tried to provide some resources. And as I alluded to earlier tonight, when I was talking about contact tracing, it is a judgment call at some point. If somebody is 6.5 feet or 7 feet away from someone that tested positive with COVID for an hour, does that matter? It matters. Duration of exposure matters, and we have to trust the judgment of our nurses and our nursing coordinator in making those calls. I can tell you from the studies that I read, and obviously I'm not a doctor on this. I just read some of the documents that were provided to me. They talked about a length of time greater than 30 minutes. I believe we're using 60 minutes as a guide. So when you're, sharing a space for 2-3+ hours, it's a consideration in the contact tracing. I can appreciate the frustration. It's not an exact science. There was a couple questions I don't know that we've quite worked out yet. I don't know, Dr. Lazovic, if you've thought at all about like locker rooms at the high school. At this stage of the game, you may not have planned for that yet, which is understandable. But as of now, I don't think we're planning on opening locker rooms. But if you want to speak to that.
Correct. We would not be opening locker rooms for the school day. Students
Right.
will continue to attend gym as they have. There is a plan. I mean, we've already had athletes coming in, and now many of them will be coming directly after school, so we'll need a place to change, but we have separate schedules for all of our different sports. And so
Okay.
working with Mr. Ibarra, Mr. Shello, and the coaches, there'll be a scheduled time that is allowable to let those spaces breathe in between, and we'll have a certain number of students in. So there is a plan for after school use.
Okay, thank you. There was a question about virtual programs for September. Honestly, I too heard some of the comments made by the governor with respect to virtual programs for September, but I don't have anything in writing yet that I could hang my hat on about what will or will not be available for certain. So I don't want to go out on a limb there, but as that information becomes more clear, certainly we'll share it. Our plan for September is to be fully open for in-person instruction. I think that is about it. I appreciated the comments from our very first speaker. I think it was an 11th grade student from Ridge, just sort of sharing her experience about liking the half-day schedule. Completely understand, and I think she was the one that noted she feels like she's already had 5 changes, and we certainly understand that and appreciate your comments. I think, as I mentioned earlier, it's really about trying to get back to the standard of what we want for our students. And, we know that everybody's gone through a lot this year, and we're here to help. And when you need help, communicate with us and we'll try to support you. I noticed also one parent asked about that question about supporting the tutorials. As I mentioned earlier, the teachers do have designated times that they have to assist the students at the high school. That schedule involves tutorial periods. They have 4 tutorial periods during the regular day that they offer after school help at the middle school, and wherever else the teachers and the students can find common time to work together. It would be different than the current schedule for sure, but certainly we're here to help. That's all I have. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. I think with that, we are up to approval of minutes. So can I please have a motion and a second of Mrs. White and Mr. Salmon? And Mr. McLaughlin, can we please have a roll call?
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Ms. Hira,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Our next item is the Finance Committee report. Mr. Salmon?
There's no report, so I'll just make a motion for the items and then.
Okay, and then do we have a second? Mrs. Richmond? And then if you want to share, Mr. Salmon, what the items are for, if there's anything.
Sure. Yeah, number one is just the standing item. Number two is a transfer of monies from the capital reserve fund to the capital projects fund to cover the cost of the WAMS science lab renovation that we're doing over the summer. And number three is approval of a grant application for the ESSER 2 funds, which were part of the CARES Act. It was a replenishment of the ESSER 2 funds, the ESSER 2 fund, the ESSER fund.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McLaughlin, can we please have a roll call?
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Ms. Hira,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Our next item is the Personnel Committee report. Can I please have a motion? Mrs. Korn and I'm sorry, I missed Mrs. Schaefer. Sorry. Mrs. McCune, do you have anything you can share for the report?
Yeah, there's a few things. I'm going to kind of go backwards through the agenda because the stuff at the end, I don't think I can report out much of. We talked about negotiations with the BTAA. Mr. Syed gave an update on the staff vaccination efforts, which he already explained in the presentation tonight. We talked about various staffing issues and a couple of leave requests and some stipends. A couple of the discussions about stipends were going to be reported out in other committees, so I'm not going to go into too much detail because I think from wellness and curriculum, we're going to be getting more updates about those. But we did hear from Ms. O'Connell about summer ESY, trying to increase the number of the amount of time in the classroom for several of the programs. She talked about that a little bit tonight in the presentation. So we heard about that and how that would affect staffing and trying to bring in some students who don't normally have ESY to the ESY program, such as resource room students. We talked about summer academic intervention for other students who are identified and how that would look. That was also mentioned earlier in the presentation about literacy and math support in the summer for students who are struggling and who are identified as falling behind during the pandemic. So we're going to hear more about that in curriculum and the curriculum committee. And then we heard about wellness and character education at Ridge High School, expanding our program and having teachers, 3 team leaders that would facilitate the program, that would create materials and train other teachers, and then having each department have a representative to that committee. And so I think we're hearing more about that also at the wellness committee, and I think it might be in the minutes, so I don't want to repeat stuff that's already going to be getting reported out. And also we talked about a stipend for the Big Sibling program, which I think was reported out already in, I don't know if it was wellness or curriculum, but it's a program where the Ridge High School students are matched with a younger student in the district to help them with both academics and mentoring during COVID. And it's become so popular that more Ridge students want to volunteer for it, and more younger students and their parents are interested in participating. So that was another stipend that we discussed. And I think the rest of the details are going to be in the other minutes. Does anyone have any questions?
Mrs. Korn?
A quick question about the mentoring, what's it called, the Big Sibling, which I think is great. My daughter was doing it, and I was wondering if the plans to keep that on, because I know it was just it was a COVID thing, right? Like extra help. And then would there be plans to do it in person, or would it always be?
Well, I
don't know
think
how.
people are
I
interested in
reported a curriculum.
continuing it.
I reported out on that
Yeah.
at curriculum
Yeah.
at the last meeting that yes, it is in fact going to be continued next year. Obviously, the hope is for it to be in person, but we'll have to see. But it is 100% going to be continued.
That's what I thought it was going to be continued, but I was thinking about like in person or not, and like the logistics of that, only because, you know, kids getting from one place to the other, or meeting where you meet, or like, because it's grammar school kids and high school kids, although it's not that big, but.
It can also, you know, at some point be a combination of things. I think that that's kind of a wait and see, but yes, it's definitely, and they're, you know, hoping that more students want to participate.
Sorry, I didn't remember your riveting
That's
minutes,
okay.
but I can't remember one day to the next. And I just think it's a great program. It's just like kudos to all those kids involved. It's really awesome.
Thanks, Mrs. McCune. So our next item is the policy committee. Mrs. Korn shared with me that there isn't a report and I don't see any items to vote on.
No.
So
our next meeting's at 12, right?
Okay, thank you. And then our next item is the curriculum committee.
Curriculum hasn't met. We'll be meeting at the end of the week, and I'll report at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. So then we are on to the wellness committee.
Wellness met on the 25th after personnel, and actually what Mrs. McCune commented on was a lot of what we talked about, but I will have full minutes out and report out next time.
Okay. And with that, we are up to public comment on non-agenda items. We know that there's at least one, Mr. Syatt. Do you have others?
I do, yes.
Okay.
Excuse me, just 1 second. I'm sorry. Did we vote on personnel?
Oh.
Oh, do we
No,
not
we did
vote?
not.
We had a motion. I'm so sorry. That's my
Yes.
fault. Thanks for keeping us honest, Mr. McLaughlin. Could we please have a roll call?
Welcome. Mr. Semin?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Ms. Beckman?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Yes.
Ms. Hira?
Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. With that, we are back to public comment on non-agenda items.
Okay.
Mr. Syatt.
The first public comment is from Terry Laird, 20 Loreline Drive. I would like the board to again address the 2021-2022 spring break scheduling as we look ahead to possibly a more normal year. I have heard the need to have an exact middle of the time period between breaks being the only consideration. I don't understand why having an exact middle is more important than the desire of the parents, as evidenced by the overwhelming responses to a parent survey previously done, which was to continue the practice of not coinciding with Holy Week or Easter week. For many of us, the ability to actually get travel and accommodations and less crowds, especially with the uncertainty of the timing of the end of the pandemic, and decent affordability are of great importance to spring break vacations. Not allowing for these advantages would hinder this special family time during the break in classes and make it out of reach for most students due to cost and lack of availability. Moving it 1 week or even 2 weeks will really not make a big difference to any perceived need for a break at an exact middle between other breaks. As most schools set their week as one of the Easter weeks, they constantly vary even more wildly from being in any middle time, and those students survive just fine. I don't understand why this board administration is making an exact middle as more important than heeding the request of the parents from an overwhelming survey response. Additionally, with the change to take snow days from other potential days off and staying away from spring break, it shows the board and administration are already supportive of people wanting to go away for the break. Why are you making it so difficult in 2022 to be able to go away and to afford it? Although vaccines are coming out, travel is still not recommended this year, which messes up many people's plans for nice vacations during a spring break time period, especially with needs to quarantine upon returning for all family members, including parents, even though students can be virtual. Many parents and of course the children are not yet vaccinated, so a good number are still likely to not travel this year and to get the break they need. With hopefully things back to normal by next spring, having it around Easter will even be worse, as most of the country will have multiple years of pent-up desires to go on vacation during that time period. Please fix the 2022 spring break week so as not to coincide with either Easter week. A very recent change to the beginning of the calendar shows that it isn't too late to fix. The next public comment is from Barbara Geary, 66 Dryden Road. As we have all witnessed in the last few weeks, life is cautiously returning to normal. My husband has returned to his office and many families gathered for the recent holidays. We are thrilled with the recent announcement of schools returning to a full-time schedule. The students that want to be in school with their teachers and peers should be able to attend to the fullest capacity. I'm hoping this is a foreshadowing for the 2021-22 school year. The school administrators have balanced a tightrope of virtual and in-person programs long enough. It is impossible to make all happy with the two programs, and at times it's nearly impossible for both programs to remain equal, and one group will always need to make a sacrifice. It's time for school to resume to full days. The school administrators have done the work and have continued to make safety adjustments as needed. Thank you. The next public comment is from Betsy Ritterford, 25 Queenberry Way. It is most disappointing to learn that option 2 is still not possible at Ridge. The topic of the unhygienic conditions in the Ridge PE classes has been brought up several times by parents and students. Students cannot change clothes, so they sit in subsequent classes sweaty and smelly. And this will only get worse as the temperatures rise and the class stays longer. How frequently is the gym floor sanitized before each class? Mr. Markarian commented after a student comment that he would work with Mr. Lazovic and Mr. Shello on possible solutions. So with the return to 5 full days, is there a plan to improve the situation for our high school students? That is all of the other public comment that I have.
Thank you, Mr. Syatt. Just a point of order. I inadvertently bypassed liaison reports. Although I don't think there are any, I just want to go on the record as saying that was our next agenda item before the non-agenda public comment. Mrs. Korn and Mrs. Richmond, do you have anything?
Somerset County Ed Services Commission is meeting on Wednesday, and I'll be able to report out after that.
Thank you.
The Municipal Alliance hasn't met. I'm pretty sure they're real busy over there, so it has been hard getting everyone together. But I think Caitlin's gonna give out a list of what's going on. Next time, if I get the list, I'll keep people abreast of what's happening with the services that they're sharing. I know they were doing the grab and go at the library. That was really good. I shared it. I sent it to Ms. Smith because just to share it with any kids for teens. And she was real happy to get that. And I think that program is going really well with the grab and go. It's seasonal, and it sounds like it's a really great program for the teens to get involved with.
I heard it was going really well.
Yeah.
I hope that's accurate. And Mrs. McCune, you didn't have anything legislative, right? Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So Mr. Markarian, getting back to the public comments, was there anything you wanted to address at this time?
Sorry, just making sure I was unmuted. You know, the only thing I heard there was the gym situation at Ridge, and I haven't. I admit I didn't get to talking to Rich or Russ about that again. So thank you for the reminder. I think it might have been Mrs. Ritterford that commented on that. So I apologize. I haven't gotten around to talking to Rich and Russ about it, but I will do that, and we'll see what we can do in terms of the whole sanitation question. For obvious reasons, we don't have the locker rooms open, but I recognize that I didn't get to talking to them about it, and I wrote myself a note to do that. So sorry about that.
Thanks, Mr. McLaughlin. I mean, Mr. Markarian, I don't know why I keep wanting to do that. The lack of voting is making me. Okay, so then our next item is board forum. Board members. Ms. Schaefer.
I just have one little comment about one of the last public comments. I mean, we've looked at that schedule, which way and end. And one of the things is that it puts spring break, if we did it the way we've traditionally done it, the last week of April, which falls right into AP exams. And I would very much urge us to stick with an academic focus, that it's more important for the kids to be back in school right before APs, which affects a lot of our upper school students, rather than fixing a spring break around convenience for travel.
I saw Mrs. Corn's hand.
I just wanted to say, let's go Mets. Today is the opening day and they're winning 2-0 and DeGrom's pitching. So it's very exciting. You know, I'm home. It's very tempting to lean back and look at the television set.
Nicely done not doing that, by the way, Mrs. Corn. Okay, well, so I guess the only question I have based on what we heard is, are there any board members that want to refer the question of the spring break item to the policy committee for any discussion? Mrs. White.
I feel like we spoke about this already. So I don't, you know, and we looked at the wording and the way it is worded, it says, well, something like, we'll try when possible, but I don't think I mean, we addressed it and decided to leave things as they were.
Yeah, I think a couple months ago, we had an email about it and the policy committee discussed it, right? I think.
Yeah, that was my recollection. I am really just responding to the comment. I mean, I will say from a historical standpoint, having been in the district for as long as I have, occasionally this happens. It's very infrequent. And to echo a little bit of what Ms. Schaefer was saying, I think we have to be mindful of what moving it could do for academic impacts. So, okay, it looks like that's not there isn't a collective desire to refer it to the policy committee, which is fine.
I think we went back and forth and it was, to move it was just too crazy. Not crazy, too, it didn't make sense at all, like Suzanne said, Ms. Schaefer said. So I'm trying to think of I was looking at the policy minutes, but I can't find where it was.
It was from the fall.
From the fall, yeah, okay.
So did anyone have anything else they wanted to address at board forum? Okay, I don't see anyone. No hands are raised. So with that, we are up to adjournment. And the hands go up. Mrs. Corn and Mr. Salmon, all in favor? All hands are up, Mr. McLaughlin. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Have a good night, everybody. Take care.